Hey everyone, Pinkowitz here. I wanted to show you a technique today in this tutorial on how to make your mixes sound clearer and louder with this one simple trick. It's using a limiter to maximize your mixes. You may hear this as referred to as mix mastering. It's a little bit of a loaded term in that when we master tracks, that's a much different process of effectively not only using a limiter, but using EQ, using saturation, using a bunch of different plugins in a what's called a mastering chain to get it not only at the 0 dB level, but with the finishing touches that the track needs for release. When we're playing DJ sets, I'm operating under the assumption that we are using tracks that have already been mastered. What we're doing here is instead using a limiter to push the gain all the way up to as close to the maximum as possible, so that especially if you're using analog equipment like this example here, with a Pioneer mixer, you can have all of the tracks sounding at a similar volume, and have it be a cohesive journey throughout the recording. So what I'm going to do is just go over to the Ableton project. And this is a raw recording from my set at the Jaguar Room in Denver. This was actually yesterday, and I recorded the set directly off of the Pioneer mixer. I used the DJM Rec app with the default settings. And the reason for that was I wanted to capture some headroom. What I mean by that is I don't want the audio clipping. I don't want to record it too loud, because if it goes beyond that 0 dB mark, what's called clipping, I'm going to get distortion and lose the audio signal. So instead, I want to record it at a softer volume and then push it when I have a chance to hop onto Ableton and listen back in my studio, kind of a finishing touch. And what I'm referring to as mastering a mix in the context of this video. Instead, I'll just use maximizing, since I think that's a slightly more accurate term. So the way that I'm going to go about doing this is first I'll demonstrate how to do it with the Ableton Stock Limiter, and then after I demonstrate that process, I'm going to switch to my fancy limiter, the A.O.M. Invisible Limiter G3, which just has a little bit of an extra touch that I like. It's a little bit more transparent, and you don't hear the limiting as much as other tools that I've tested. That said, you can get extremely close, if not most or all of the way there, with the Ableton Stock Limiter. And the way that I navigate to this is by clicking on Audio Effects in the sidebar after I've expanded it. I go to Limiter, and then I put this on the device chain. And this is just the raw mix recording that I uploaded to Dropbox from my phone, that I connected with recorded on a USB cable with my phone, and popped it in this Ableton project. So I turned down the master volume a little bit here, so that you can still hear me while the mix is playing, but generally this would be at 0 as well for the export, and I'll reset that at the end. So let's talk about automation. What we're going to do is hit the A button, and what that does is enables the automation view, and you can see this little red line here emerge. And what I'm going to do is click on this gain knob, and that's what will relate this automation curve, which is the change in this control over time throughout the entire mix. And so what I can do is, let's see. This is the full mix zoomed out. I can zoom in by pushing the Option or Windows key and scrolling in with my mouse scroll bar. So it's sometimes nice to have it all just on one visual. So let's play the mix and get some audio. So we can hear that that's pretty soft. And what I'm going to look for is a little bit of gain reduction between 0 and -6, ideally around 0 and -3. I want soft little dips, but really nothing more than that. The default ceiling here is negative 0.3 dB. You can change that if you want, but that's a pretty common one. Really, the gain, the amount of volume that we're pushing on the mix, is the main control that I'm going to adjust. And what I'm going to do is just increase this gain knob, and I'm going to keep increasing. I'll just jump a little bit ahead in the mix. That's too far. Let's go back. We keep listening for the gain, or keep looking for the gain reduction. So I'll keep going. Still nothing, so we'll increase. I'm gonna turn down the master volume just for now so that you can still hear me. Now I'm going to increase more. We're at about 12 decibels of gain increase. Still not much limiting. There we go. Did you see the little yellow bar start to appear? That's at the moment that we're getting close. I'm going to push it just a bit further. Let's call it 15. Now we're in the breakdown right now, so maybe let's get to the part where the kick drum is. That's generally the reference point that I use. And you know what? That's actually a little bit much, so maybe I'll just back it down. 13 sounds pretty good for this part. And the reason for that was at the beginning, the trim knobs, the volume was very low and the master volume was low. Throughout the course of the set, the volume was increasing or decreasing, generally increasing. So you're going to need to adjust the amount of gain that you're putting onto the recording based off of what the raw recording volume looks like. And that's where you get into the art and science of this technique. You kind of just feel it out and look at the limiter and gradually add as much as you need. So I'm going to now disable this limiter and put on the fancy one. I've already configured it for about 13 decibels as well. And so what I'm going to do here is make sure that I have the invisible limiter input gain knob mapped to the control. You can click on it as well. And since I like this 13 decibel mark, very similar to the Ableton Stock Limiter, where I'm noticing dips in gain reduction between 0 and -2 decibels, this is looking pretty good. And remember that we don't really use breakdowns as the reference. We want a little bit of dynamics. So dynamics meaning change in the audio file. So what I'll do is just jump ahead back to where I hear a kick drum again, where I get the full frequency spectrum, the low end, the mid, the high end of the track, and use that as the reference point. This is looking pretty good. I could jump ahead maybe toward the end of the mix where we can see the waveform getting a lot larger. So what I'll do is just throw some 13 points. I would go a lot slower and really look at the different elements when I go through and master this full mix, but this is more just for a quick reference. What I'll do is go to what I think is the largest waveform that I see here. I'll throw in the 13 decibel points. Again, these can be changed, but this is an example of, all right, maybe we've got too much. See how it's kind of jumping slightly over the 2 decibel mark? What I want to do is ease the amount of gain that we're adding just a little bit. So maybe I'm going to change that to 12 decibels or 11. And what I can do is stretch out. Oops, that's too much. We'll change it back to 11 by right-clicking Edit Value. What we can do is hold down the Alt key and drag, and even make it a bit more of a natural curve versus a straight line, making it seem a little less robotic. And we can see now for this louder part, where I definitely remember cranking up the trim and the gain a little bit, we're still around the -2 mark. We're not really exceeding that. And again, this is the art and science of this technique. It's going through the mix, applying the right amount of gain adjustments, and when you ultimately get to a full completed timeline of gain adjustments, what I'll do is make another clip, and I will, this will be a little loud for a second. May want to turn down your volume. Okay, cool. So I hope I didn't blow out your speakers in that section. I may have to edit that part out. But what I did was captured the audio from the raw output, and you can see how it's all expanded now compared to how it started. So this is the end product that we're looking for when I talk about maximizing mixes. So yeah, I'd say that's the main technique. Thanks very much for tuning in. And one quick note is that I do this service professionally. So if you're really not in the mood to open up an Ableton console, you want to have the fancy limiter on there, and really just my ear for adjustments, since I've been doing this a lot now, feel free to reach out, and I'd be happy to talk about this service with you as well. I hope this tutorial was useful and that you now know how to do this technique on your own mixes. And if it helps, let me know. I might make some more tutorials like this in the future. Thanks, everybody. Pinkowitz signing off.